Hi, and welcome to week 3. This week we're going to start using the tools a little bit further. Still get used to using the hotkeys because those are going to help you along the way. So you're already watching the week 3 video. Our first assignment this week is called parallax. So I have a video here going over step by step on how we do parallax. But for those of you that have an iPhone, if you open your phone and you look at your apps, if you're tipping your phone from left to right, you can see that the apps kind of move. It's a visual parallax. Mainly what parallax is doing is separating a subject from the background and giving depth. This is a really commonly used motion graphics element. It's simple in that there's not a lot of animation. We're just moving something slightly or at a different speed from something else, but we're giving this cool effect to it. I don't know how many of you have Netflix, but if you let Netflix sit and it starts to show you, the Netflix movies that are out, they actually use parallax. It's a still image, but they pull the main characters out of it and have them kind of floating in front. So I'd recommend kind of look up parallax and see what you can find, and then pick a photo of your own, please, and separate the subject from the background. You're going to clone stamp out the background, and I talk about how to do that in this video. And then you're going to bring them into After Effects and animate just the position. It's a very simple position animation, but again, it makes it pop, it gives things character, it gives it life. So fun to do. This one is due Wednesday, so that's a midweek assignment. Here is some information on parallax. I don't know why there's a huge space here. I couldn't get rid of it, but scroll down to read more. I have a little example here for you to look at. Just having things move. Now you can do parallax with scale, but all I'm asking for right now is position. Then we have the bee on flower assignment. I'm going to go over this whole thing in the video, but you're going to create a bee and flower in Illustrator, bring them into After Effects and adjust their anchor points with the pan behind tool, animate the bee 3 times. You're going to do a motion sketch, animate on a path, and hand animate. See which one you prefer. Try to create a whole scene. Render out the animation when you're all done, but try to have maybe a background. You can add any additional animation on top of this, but do Sunday. So what am I looking for? I am not going to grade you on your illustrations. I did these 2 illustrations using only shape and pen tool, and the pen tool is limited. If you're not comfortable with the pen tool, that's okay. You can just use shapes. For instance, we can quickly kind of get the bee that I had here using shapes. Okay? If you have any questions on how to use tools in Illustrator or anything like that, don't hesitate. You can let me know. The one thing in Illustrator to be aware of. So remember, when you're working in Illustrator, we have layers and every shape is put on its own layer, but I need you to create kind of a layer grouping here. So if we hit this plus sign, it's create a new layer, and then you want to label it bee and flower. So I've got my bee in the bee layer, my flower in the flower layer, and I have saved this just as bee flower AI. We'll just replace. Okay? So then I'm going to open up After Effects. We're going to still be using that 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720. I would probably say for this one, just do 1280 by 720 to keep it fairly simple. I'm going to pause this and let it all open. All right, so now we're here in After Effects. I'll hit OK. I'm just going to close this. New composition, 1280 by 720. 15 seconds is a good place to start, and I'll hit OK. Now it's just called Comp 1. You could have done it in the window, or we can right mouse click and rename. When you're naming things, I tend to do this in any software. Don't use any special characters, don't use any spaces. All I use are alphabet letters and capital and lowercase to distinguish between words. All right. So now you can go to File, Import File, or right mouse click and import file. Now we need a bee flower. Now remember, we talked about in parallax, we can do footage, we can create a composition. I'm going to need both of my layers, so I'm going to do this as a composition. Open. So now I have this folder that has my bee flower layers. So it has my bee, and you can kind of preview up here, and it has my flower. So you can choose what composition you want to use. Now look at these little previews here. Bee flower that I set up is 1280 by 720. The bee flower from Illustrator is a print-based ratio, so it just had to kind of convert. So I'm going to keep with my bee flower composition that I just created. And what you can do is grab these two layers, or one at a time, whatever is easier for you, and click and drag down. Okay, so now we can see they're both here. They're actually separate. Now, because this was an Illustrator file, you can see the dimensions around my bee or my flower match the page. It doesn't recognize the page or the objects on the page. So we're going to need to use our pan behind tool. If you hold your mouse over the tools, it'll tell you the name and the hotkey. So it's hotkey Y. So I know for my flower, I want my anchor point to be right at the bottom there. And then I know for my bee, I want it to be centered just in the middle of my bee like that. Now I have black in my composition, so it would be smart of me to change the background. So I'll go into composition settings, and I'll change my background color to a gray. I've got a little red here. Now note that currently I don't have a background. The viewport or composition background that After Effects is giving me is just a placeholder to view in After Effects. So if you wanted to create an environment, you could use the rectangle tool. Before you use your rectangle tool, we will get into masks as we get forward, but click off of any of your layers. Make sure you're not selected on anything. Now I can use my rectangle tool to create, if I wanted to make a blue background, or if I wanted to do a horizon line or anything like that. Let's just do normal here, solid color. Because my opacity is set to 0. There we go. Okay. Sorry, a little bit of troubleshooting can help you guys to learn as well. So I'm going to delete these extra rectangles that I have here. Make this one. Okay. So let's say I wanted this as my horizon line. Layer order matters, so click and drag down. Then my bee and flower are on it. So I can actually, let's change this stroke to be a greenish color. There we go. All right. It's a little too blue for me. Okay. Not important, but so now I can go to my flower. I'm going to move this down. All right, and I'm going to bring my bee, we'll start him over here. All right, so I said your first one is going to be a bee using motion sketch. So I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to rename motion sketch, just so I can remember, because we're going to have a lot of bees going here. So for motion sketch, you're going to go to Window, and then motion sketch. It's going to pop up, might be a little different spot on yours. But what you're going to do is you're going to click Start Capture, and then you're going to move the bee at whatever speed and doing whatever you want. All right, so I'm going to start with my bee off frame. Okay, and then I'm going to do start capture, grab the bee, and he goes flying through. Okay, you can see all of the keyframes that it made, and if we hit play, you can see my bee zooming through. Okay, so you can play around with that. Then we're going to bring in your bee again. So click and drag down. Here's another bee. I'm going to use my pan behind tool to center my anchor point. Now I want you to use a path. So we're going to use our pen tool for this. So I'm going to rename this one pen tool. And then make sure you're not clicked on anything. So I can twirl all these up and just click in the negative space. I'm going to grab the pen tool and I'm going to create a path. I'll do this a little bit lower. Click and drag out to get the curve that you want. And I'll drag down. Pretty simple. We're just going to have them go up and down. Then you're going to twirl down on your shape layer tool. Twirl down on contents, shape 1, path 1, and click the path button, aka the word that says path. Command C for copy, and then we're going to actually paste it on our bee layer. Before you do it, move your bee to be where you want it to start. Then we can go down into position, click on the word position, Command V or Control V to paste. You can see I have 3 keys here. Those represent the 3 pen points that I've made. So you can always space them out differently, but we can see it animates on the path. Now that we have that kind of set, you can actually grab that shape layer and hit delete on your keyboard because we don't need that path. We've used it already. All right. So now I have 2 bees set. I'm going to click up in here and drag down for my final bee. If you double click on any layer, like I just did, you'll notice that it opens up in its own window and you've lost your environment. Sometimes you might not realize that this happened, but just make sure. Right now I'm in the layer. Go back to the composition and then you'll be set. Right mouse click, rename, and animate. And then you're just going to use position, rotation, and scale. And well, probably not scale, but position and rotation. If you want it to look like it's flying towards the camera, you can use scale. But you will hand animate this bee. Don't forget, we got to use our pan behind tool to move our anchor point to start. Then we can set up where we want it to be. I would love to see you get some interaction with the flower. So, you know, maybe I'm going to let this other bee fly off. And then I'll do position here. We'll start with this bee. Maybe it'll just come from the top, slowly come in, and then we'll move towards the flower. We'll go up, and then land on the flower. Now, when you land, think about it, it's going to go a little bit further down onto the flower, and then we'll come back up a bit. Now, let's say I just want to preview because I'm really focusing on the animation right here. You can always use the work area time slider and slide these in. That way, when you hit spacebar, it's only previewing that part. Okay. Then, you know, we could always bring the flower into it and you could give a little rotation. So I'll use this key. I'll actually use a few frames before. I'll have this set. Actually, I'll just use this. So I'm going to move this key over, and then when the B comes up, we can move it a little bit this way. If you want to move both of your keys, I'm going to select over these and move them over. Let's say I want to copy and paste a keyframe. Don't forget that I can just move my time slider. If I want it to go back to where it started, Command C, Command V. Now you see I have 3 keyframes. And I'm getting some movement to the flower. Boop. Okay, so the minimum I'm looking for are 3 Bs, motion sketch, pen tool, hand animate. I would love to see some interaction with the flower, and I'd love to see you set up some sort of environment or additional animation. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions this week, and I look forward to seeing your animations.